Hey guys, it's your boy Valdo, and today I have the sickest news for people who love traps like myself. And I'm not just talking about Bailey J. Today we have something that's going to change traps and potentially make them better than self-cast. So on Zugi's coffee, or I'm sorry, Nugi's coffee talk, um, Ziggy D reveals to everyone that trap support will not have a cooldown, and Bex was there too, so I'm surprised if that wasn't the case, she would have corrected him or something like that. But anyways, what the fuck? That's crazy. So that means that literally every skill in the game can be supported by Trap reliably. Um, and unless they change something like the damage or I don't even know the penalties of the Trap support gem, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm not quite sure. But if this is the case, that means that every bow trapper can just do whatever the fuck they want. Shrapnel shot traps are going to melt bosses now. What are cooldowns? That 4 second long ass cooldown to zero is nuts. And I don't even know how to explain the implications this is going to have on things like bladefall traps, vortex traps coming back, more hole tossers. Like this is quite insane. Like, and by insane, I mean it might even have an issue, or it might even infringe on the newer traps themselves, considering the newer traps are quite powerful and don't require the trap support gem, which is a good thing. Um, but with the way traps are looking, combos and whatnot, this is going to be a big deal. Uh, yeah, I mean that's the biggest piece of news there is. Besides that, though, I wanted to show you guys something else that's kind of cool. This is a bit inspired by that in a way. It's kind of what I'm showing you here is not just the exact build. In fact, I'm gonna have to ask you guys, kind of moving forward, ignore the tree. I just kind of throw it up because it is a visual of a bit of a general background of what I'm looking at. But what I am here to tell you about is a cold trapper, and then a spin on that same cold trapper, which I would consider to be an avatar of fire cold trapper. Um, Initially, though, the Cold Trapper, which is going to see, I feel like it might potentially be one of the better ones. I don't think it's going to be as good as, say, a Crit Trapper with Lightning Trap, but the point here I am making is that Cold Trap has a pretty solid rotation. So my thoughts were going to be, let's say that you've got your skills, you're going to be throwing a Bear Trap because the Bear Trap is the one that you want to throw normally to get the multiplier on all the other traps. If things go as planned. So you throw your bear trap, which in my particular situation I have bear trap curse on hit frostbite. And I land my bear trap, and then throw out my frost bomb traps, which are going to then further reduce their cold resistance. And then after throwing those two, then we can actually start throwing our ice traps and cold snap traps or vortex traps, whatever it is. Um, and so I guess for my personal taste, I would say that cold snap and ice trap would be like the two premier, probably the two best skills to trap up, considering you get a shit ton of frenzy charges based on being a trapper. And cold snap works quite well with that. And ice trap is just the best ice scaling trap. Um, so there isn't too many crazy things, I guess, with that combo. One thing that I thought was really interesting is hypothermia on bear trap would make it to where so hypothermia, essentially the big difference that hypothermia makes for cold skills is it allows chilled enemies or enemies that are chilled then have a higher chance to be frozen. Um, I think it's by 20%. And I thought that was kind of cool because if you put if you have any type of added cold damage to spells or something of the sorts on your bear trap, when you throw it, your other skills will just have an innately higher effective chill and chance to freeze enemies as well, which is kind of a big deal. I don't think you quite need it for things like cold snap, because already has such a high chance to freeze anyways. But every little bit helps. If I'm not mistaken, I think hypothermia and ice bite are getting a bit of changes to also have their effects work with damage over time, which is kind of sweet, considering the new Val Cold Snap has a damage over time effect on it as well. So when you activate Val Cold Snap, and I honestly have no idea how this is going to work with like Cluster Trap because if you guys have seen Val Cold Snap, it's like a bit of a ground nuke. um, that like it's like a ground nuke, but then it spreads out in a circle and leaves a massive blizzard behind. Essentially, what Host does whenever he comes into the board. So I mean, all I'm saying is this: Hypothermia and Ice Bite are going to be pretty good with Cold Snap, and it's also going to be quite good with this particular build I'm running, where we want to kind of set things up using Bear Trap. Because it really sets the groundwork for Frostbite. I mean, Frostbolt or Frost Bomb. Sorry, Frost Bomb is quite good with obviously all cold skills, and cold skills have quite a large selection of penetration of things like Pandemonium, which is this guy right here. Pandemonius is an amulet that just gives you exactly what you need, which is penetration. And chilling is very easy. Like I said, chill has a base duration of, I believe, 4 seconds, and it can occur on anything whenever it takes cold damage. And the chill is based on the severity of the damage they take. Um, and so basically, chilling enemies is easy, especially with Pandemonius if you end up getting it. I think this build is going to be shattering a lot, and if I'm not mistaken, with this much penetration and with how current cold skills are working, with the new trap changes, I think a Cold Snap or Vortex Trapper would be pretty good. And Cold Snap and Vortex go hand in hand as well because both of those skills have degens on them now. So that's kind of cool. I'm not sure how that's actually going to work out. It's going to be 2 layers of degen on the ground as you throw your traps, which is quite nice. That would plus Frostbolt and all those other cool things seem like it's going to be a good time. Definitely some more interesting rotation-esque gameplay, which is what I prefer, kind of what I like. Uh, and I guess we'll kind of cut right into our avatar of Fire One, which has a very interesting item called the Realm Ender, one of my personal favorites, something that I was using way back with the Cold to Fire Trapper. So what this thing does is it gives you +1 to socketed fire, cold, and elemental gems. If you throw Ice Trap on this, Ice Trap is going to get +3, which is Empower. Um, if you corrupt this item with the corruption that we saw on the Frost Shiver, is it Frost Shiver or let's find out. Frost Furno. So if you have Frost Furno, or I'm sorry, if you have Realm Ender and you corrupt it with the same Frost Furno corruption, which we've seen on Frost Furno itself, which is +2 to cold and fire, then the Realm Ender becomes basically like a +5 to your cold scaling stuff. So +5 to any one skill is not, it's not a joke. And even then, if you socket in other things that would change, say if you have any fire stuff in there, also changes it. But I guess the really important part is if we go to our skills really quick and we go to our avatar fire ice trap, added cold also gets +5. In fact, we could probably even, and sadly on this particular setup, let's take out Conk Effect because it's not really helpful. We can instead use like Hypothermia or something. I think Elemental Focus gets a plus from it if I'm not mistaken. Let's like mid explanation find that out. Elemental Focus. Oh yeah, it's not a skill. Anyways, I just thought it was really sick that things like added cold and ice trap got like +5 from that particular scenario. So that's quite cool. And then one last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was Mirebow, which is the one of my last league I used it to get to like 90 and kill Minotaur and stuff. Well, basically kill Guardians like Hydra, pretty much most of the end game except for Shaper, which I kind of got burnt out before I could do, which is Mirebow. Mirebow is a sick item. It is a 6 link for any non-innate trap skill. So moving forward, if we're going to be using a staff in our build, any for leveling especially, this is like a mini belly of the beast that's a 6 link and gives you some slight damage. This thing is insane. This with the new rules for trap is even more insane. And I just want to say one last thing about one last thing about this particular subject. With the changes to how trap support, ice trap, fire trap, explosive trap, all these traps, how they work, with none of them now requiring cooldown reduction, the design space for um well, firstly, the way this impacts the way we make builds for traps has changed immensely. Uber traps or the super traps are quite powerful, and we'll have to see going forward how that impacts these builds if they are worth um I know they're worth it, but if it's worth investing cooldown in those skills. So I guess what I'm saying is, how much damage are we doing on the regular? How much damage are we doing with our main traps? Do we need to take trap cooldown reduction? Do we need Tinker Skin anymore? Are these items like a must have? Do you even need the Saboteur cooldown reduction anymore if all these have no cooldown? And the real reason you're taking these cooldown reduction is because the Uber traps. It's starting to look like a no. I'll be fair. Um, so I almost feel like making a trap going forward, that's like easily these four nodes. This is literally what always has to be done. Boom, 3, 4, 5 points, skill points for cooldown reduction. Guess what? You just saved 5 points. 5 points not required for cooldown reduction now if we don't need it going forward. And if you do need it, advanced traps, which is going to be trap cooldown support gem that will work for these traps, will give them a bonus, which is sick. Which means if we really need to run a super trap and we don't want to invest 5 skill points if approaching it from this direction, then we'll have the option of no longer taking these, which is a big fucking deal. Bow trappers don't have to take this anymore. Bow trappers literally can throw their blast ram, shrapnel shot, their rain of arrows traps as much as they want now. It's like no big fucking deal. This is and probably the biggest change to traps ever. And I'm gonna bring it back. I know initially when I started, I guess, speaking up about traps, the first thing I had, one of my biggest concerns was in the direction that we are going with traps, their identity is being muddied because we don't have cooldowns anymore. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things that make traps unique. Trap throwing speed, trap arming speed, cooldown reduction is no longer a thing. You're literally throwing it, and then you're throwing it on the ground. It has to be tripped up, so on and so forth. But why on earth would you self-cast? Beyond the reason of self-casting skills that must be self-cast, like channeling skills, or beyond the reason of self-casting skills that kind of need to be self-casted, like Blade Vortex and whatnot. Um, a lot of these skills, there's a draw. There's a good part about this. So, for example, Fireball, Val Fireball, Spark, Val Spark, um, a lot of the Val skills, Arc and Val Arc, and even then those can be used with mines. A lot of those skills are great with self-cast, and self-cast is looking kind of weak now. But I guess the good implication here is that it seems as though all of the really bad skills, Vortex, Bladefall, a lot of the really bad AoE skills on traps sound a lot better. Almost like they were made for it. I mean, the other day I threw a Bladefall trap just to see what it felt like. That shit hit all of the screen. It felt wrong. It felt a little bit stupid on how much damage it dealt. And I feel like with the direction things are going, traps and like can you even say traps are gay anymore? Is it not possible that self-cast is gay? I'm just saying, because self-cast is moving in this place where it's almost looking weaker than traps right now. Traps are looking pretty juicy, and ultimately, I almost feel like we're gonna see a time where self-casting needs it's gonna need something like, I don't know, like spell echo has to repeat itself 3 times now, or we need an ancestral call for self casting. So that's just another conversation. But generally moving forward, I feel like we're gonna have a big conversation on how self cast needs to be balanced, and yeah, so on and so forth. But I mean, let me know how you guys feel about these changes because they're kind of a big deal. I'm actually quite excited because I have a lot of ideas and builds for some of the new stuff. Um, but stay tuned, guys. I'm gonna do more of these. I mean, as long as they have information coming out. I'll be putting these out, but we're coming upon the day. It is only like what 5 days away for us to get that release. So that's the first, yeah, Friday. It's kind of a big deal. I'm gonna be on all day. I'm going to potentially stream. So catch me. I will link you guys in the description, my Twitch when that happens. So yeah, thanks guys for watching. Again, let me know what how you feel about this, and I will see you guys next time. Ciao.